Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the ESD for 2030 roadmap launch for the Asia-Pacific region. My name is Mark Mans from the Asia-Pacific Regional Bureau of Education in Bangkok. I'm pleased to have all of you with us today for this very important launch event. I will be your guide throughout the next hour and 15 minutes. Before we begin, just a few notes to get us started. Please note we do have interpretation in Russian. So if you can go to the interpretation link at the bottom of your screen, if you would like to listen in Russian, please go ahead and do that now. For those logging in on Zoom, unfortunately, we don't have audio available for you. You're not allowed to speak. Only the panelists will speak. And for all those panelists at the moment, please mute your microphones. There is a Q&A function available. So if you go to the bottom of your screen again, you're able to ask questions to the panelists and speakers. Please do indicate your name and your organization from where you're from, as well as your question, and then we'll try to be able to take some time at the end of the event to address your concerns. The chat box is unavailable to type into for participants, but from time to time, please note the chat box, and we'll be updating important announcements or links for your information. Now, to begin this event, I would like to call on the Director of the Regional Bureau of Education, Mr. Shigeru Aoyagi, to greet and welcome you all. Mr. Aoyagi?
Thank you, Mark. Dear participants, speakers, colleagues, and guests, good afternoon to you all from Bangkok. It is my great pleasure to welcome you all to the Asia-Pacific regional launch of the Education for Sustainable Development Roadmap for 2030. On behalf of UNESCO, I'd like to thank all of you for joining us today for this very important occasion. The international commitment to ESD in tandem with global citizenship education is recognized in SDG Target 4.7, which nurtures learners with cross-cutting competencies to take action and address emerging complex global challenges towards inclusive growth and peaceful coexistence. Target 4.7 states that by 2030, ensure that all learners acquire knowledge and skills needed to promote sustainable development. In this sense, ESD embodies policy discourse at local, national, and global levels to address social, economic, and environmental dimensions. Worldwide, progress towards Target 4.7 has been impressive. Between 2012 and 2016, 98% of countries included SDG 4.7 in their constitutions or domestic legislation. In order to reaffirm member states' shared vision on ESD, the 40th session of UNESCO General Conference has approved the new ESD for 2030 framework for the next decade, mainstreaming ESD within the 2030 agenda. As a part of this effort, UNESCO is pleased to launch the ESD for 2030 roadmap, which provides guidance for member states and other stakeholders for the implementation of ESD for 2030. With the postponement of the UNESCO World Conference on ESD from June last year to May this year, from last year to May next year, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, UNESCO is launching the ESD for 2030 roadmap through a series of regional events. Today, UNESCO Bangkok is pleased to host the first of these launch events and welcomes our member states in the Asia-Pacific region to support and act on this new initiative. Dear participants, we are fully aware that there are gaps and challenges we have to address. Despite the considerable efforts and progress in terms of mainstreaming and integrating ESD in education policies, there remain regional differences in how much progress has been achieved. In our region, there are gaps between government's initial policy commitments and implementation, with a lack of relevant educational and pedagogical initiatives to provide financial, technical, and human resources to promote ESD principles. In many cases, teachers need to seek for relevant knowledge during their in-service training, because ESD principles are not fully integrated in pre-service training. The Asia Pacific is below the global average, with insufficient hours allocated for teaching and a lack of learning materials on principles and topics related to ESD. The coverage of ESD principles in curricula is less than in other regions and largely limited to formal education, with insufficient inclusion in non-formal and adult education. Dear participants, we all know that ESD contributes to empowering and motivating learners to become active citizens with critical awareness and willingness to participate in achieving a sustainable future. Pedagogies that promote such environment need to be learner-centered, action-oriented, and transformative. Ministries of education should take responsibility to mainstream ESD across all aspects of educational institutions, including curriculum, teaching and learning, community partnerships, governance policy, and facilities to equip educators and students with key competencies on sustainability awareness and the capability to respond to challenges. To move forward towards SDG 4.7, we need to foster partnerships at different levels of government and with other concerned parties. The continued exchange of perspectives and knowledge will promote mutual accountability on ESD advancement and maximize potential contributions. Dear participants, today we are pleased to review and build on the expertise, resources, and partnerships related to ESD and SDGs in the region, and encourage member states to commit country-level initiatives to implement ESD for 2030. We will have speakers from key partners in this region, such as SEAMEO and MGIEP, and hear from member states, welcoming speakers from Japan, the Pacific, Kazakhstan, Bhutan, and Cambodia. As part of the ESD for 2030 implementation plan, UNESCO invites member states to submit proposals for country initiatives by the end of this next year. All parties, government, international development agencies, civil society, the private sector, and others need to mobilize and engage to contribute to these initiatives. In conclusion, once again, I'd like to thank you all for joining us today, and I'm very much looking forward to learning more about the progress on ESD across the region. Thanks so much for your attention. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you very much, Mr. Aoyagi, for your warm welcome and your important information and call to action for our member states. This is very critical for our ESD for 2030 roadmap. Next, we're pleased to present a summary and overview of the ESD for 2030 roadmap, which is now launched. Our colleagues will be posting the link for the roadmap in our chat box for you to download. For this summary and overview, I'd like to welcome Nini Tong, who from the Section for Inclusive Quality Education at UNESCO Bangkok. Nini, the floor is yours.
Mark, thank you so much. Thank you. First of all, I also wanted to welcome all of you to the Asia and the Pacific online launch of Education for Sustainable Development roadmap for the period of 2030. Let me start by saying that the global effort to strengthen the role of education for sustainable development has started in the 70s. but it's gained the global traction through Chapter 36 of the Agenda 21 adopted to the Rio Art Summit in 1992. And the subsequent launch of the UN Decade on Education for Sustainable Development from 2005 to 2014, the UN Decade was followed by the 5-year Global Action Program GAPS on ESD, which was led by the group of 97 key partners to reach 37 million learners and 2 million teachers across the world. As my director mentioned, the launch of 17 Sustainable Development Goals in 2015 brought renewed emphasis on the role of ESD as recognized explicitly in our target SDG target 4.7. This is that the globally agreed targets aim to ensure by saying that by 2030 that all learners acquire the knowledge and skill to promote sustainable development. So we are now in 2020. We are facing serious challenge. In the short term, everybody knows that this COVID-19 pandemic, and in the long run, we know that there's a climate crisis. That is why our UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said, we are in battle for our life. What we know, what we believe in, and what we do need to change. What we have learned so far does not prepare us for the challenge. So this cannot go on. We must urgently learn to live differently. As you see that we UNESCO, as the lead UN agency on ESD, we are pleased to launch this new global framework for ESD called Education for Sustainable Development toward achieving the SDG. And in short, we call it ESD for 2030 as the follow-up to the, we call it GAP. In this period of 2020 to 2030, the ESD for 2030 framework, we are aimed to fully integrate ESD and this 17 SDG into the policy, learning environments, capacity building for educators, and also the empowerment and mobilization of young people, and also local level actions. So, and the roadmap we are launching today, as you know, that the underline the plan for action to implement the framework for the next coming 10 years. So let us dive into what and how and who. Mark the same one. So there are three key reflections raised in the framework. First, the emphasis on education role for the achievement of the 17 SDGs. So UN General Assembly recognized that ESD is the integrated elements of the Sustainable Development Goal on quality education and the key challenge for all the other sustainable development, which is true. While all ESD work mobilize action towards the achievement of all other SDGs, the ESD raised the awareness for the action on these 17 goals in education settings, I would say. ESD also promote critical and contextualized understanding of the SDGs, which invite the learners to see the interlinkage and tension between the goal in their local, national, and regional context as well. So as we now coming for the 10 years, which we may be our last window opportunity to turn our fate into rounds. ESD must focus on the big transformation that is needed for sustainable development and how education can provide relevant interventions. So ESD can employ learning contents, pedagogy, and a learning environment also that promotes transformative action for individual learners. So I would say individual action are intertwined with the structure chain that aid to transform the deep cause of the crisis we face today. So moreover, I would say ESD has to respond to the opportunity and challenge brought about by the technical advancements and reinforcing the core value of sustainability. So that we can see that there's a three key futures: transformative action, structure change, and technology future, which we need to rely on. So the urgency for the extent, since the crisis called for stronger leadership of our member states. To this end, ESD for 2030 focus on country initiative. As our director mentioned, through which country can address their 5 action area, engage all the concerned stakeholders, and to advocate and mobilize the resource, what we all have to do together. UNESCO invite all the member states to launch your country initiative on ESD for 2030, building the existing network, existing work on the ESD and creating new momentum. These efforts should maybe align with our UNESCO global priority for Africa, gender equality, and also particularly emphasize should be made for the small island developing state also. So now that what should we specifically to promote these 70 SDG goals? The big individual and the societal transformation and the country leaderships. So I would say during the consultation to develop ESD for 2030 framework, all ESD stakeholders have called for continued investment around the 5 priority action I mentioned area, which has been established for the GAP, which is namely on advancing policy to integrate ESD into education policy, plans, and also initiative on the sustainable developments. Transformation learning environment to apply whole institution approach to ESD, where learners learn what they live and also live what they learned. Also, we need to build capacity of the educator to develop ESD capacity through pre-service and then in-service training for the educators. We also need to empowering and mobilizing youth to create opportunity for young people and engage them as a key actors, and accelerating local level action to develop community action plan to promote individual and societal transformation. These are the 5 priority areas what we agree to decide and proceed. Multi-stakeholder approach is the key to the success, as we all know. Policymakers from local, national, regional level, from Ministry of Education, and also the Ministry of Environment and other line ministry related to SDG, as well as city, community, all need to be involved. So institutional leaders, starting from school headmaster to other education institution and to leader of the other related sustainable development, they all are crucial, as well as learner, parent, educator, which we shouldn't forget also. So young people hold the key to innovation, communities. They are also very ground where transformation can take place in the actionable skills. So how can we implement this 5 priority action area for the ESD for 2030 framework? At the heart of the implementation is in-country initiatives on ESD for 2030. So all UNESCO member states are invited to launch your own country initiative to lead the mainstream of ESD in education and sustainable development. So I will explain a bit of detail in the following slides. Secondly, the new framework will encourage strong partnerships and collaboration through ESD for 2030 network, we call it ESD Nets, at the global and regional level. So which will invite the representative of country initiated and other ESD actors from education and sustainable development communities. Communication and advocacy effort, which are very important, including the UNESCO Japan ESD Prize, will be strengthened. Evidence-informed implementation of the framework by tracking issue and trend in education and sustainable development, and also mobilizing resources through making full use of intersectoral, multidisciplinary nature of UNESCO, as well as diverse partners should be further strengthened. So various efforts to monitor progress will be pursued with the aim of achieving SDG target, particularly 4.7 by 2030. So country initiatives should build on ongoing effort on ESD as well as possible new effort. So it is like a big basket of ESD effort and multi-stakeholder from both education and also other sustainable development sector who are willing to join hands to work together. It should begin an open and inclusive network of activity and actors. Such as, for example, any passionate teachers or any enthusiastic mayor should be able to join and work in the decentralized nature, voluntarily and also collaborated way with a working group that support them. So the DDO the country initiated how to prepare the launch, we will further communicate and send it to you for all the link. UNESCO will provide also technical support to help the country to organize the preparatory multi-stakeholder workshops. UNESCO will also provide the detailed workshop material and video to help kick off for the preparation of your stakeholder consultation in the countries. Especially, there is a small amount of seed funding available for the number of country for the developing country in the region to help organize workshop, thanks to the kind support for Germany Funding Trust. The first group of the country who start this preparation for country initiative between now and April next year, where we offer a chance to prominently showcase their country example at the highest level ministerial roundtable and plenary section at the UNESCO World Conference on ESD, which we plan to organize in May next year. After the launch event, there will be the regional technical workshop organized to discuss the detail of this country initiative. So in the meantime, please contact, we will communicate also our UNESCO regional office to express interest to participate in the country initiative and raise the question which you may have. So what next? So after we launch the event today, there will be the regional technical workshop to discuss the country initiative. Probably we are thinking of holding the consultation workshop on March 2021. And then each country will organize country-level preparatory workshops with the support of UNESCO and different stakeholders also. When we prepare, country will submit their country initiative plan, and then to be showcased at our UNESCO World Conference in Berlin, Germany, which we plan to organize in between 7 to 19 May in 2021, which is likely to be an online event. To follow up from this Berlin events, 1 week after, there will be the regional technical meeting on the action plan as well as physical meeting planned back-to-back regional SDG4 meeting until 2022. That's what we are planning. So from 2023, every 2 years, a global ESD net meeting is planning to exchange and collaborate on ESD for 2030. So that is the collaborative work, including midterm review in 2025 and also final review in 2030. So it came to the end of my presentation, which comes from this Stefania Giannini, our Assistant Director General for Education for UNESCO. She said, we are increasingly asking if what people learn is truly relevant to their lives. If what they learn helps to ensure the survival of our planet. Education for sustainable development can provide the knowledge, awareness, and action that empower people to transform themselves and also transform society. So, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleague, ESD is, I would say, no longer a feel-good care for the nature topics in the margin of the education policy. It should be at the heart of the very heart and hand, as well as the heart of our learners. So, decade of the action between 2020 to 2030 will define our survival. As I said before, that may be our window of opportunity to make it happen. This is simply no time to lose, I would say, and possible no second chance, as we all know that. Create your country initiative. We would like to request, bring together actors in all walk of life and transform learning. So it is now or never. So having said that, I would like to thank you for your attention. And if you would like to have more information, we list down all the address and communication. So with this, I would like to thank you again all. And once again, thanks. Mark, over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nini, for that excellent overview of the ESD for 2030 roadmap. As Nini mentioned, the report is now available. We've shared the link with you in the chat box. The report is available online through our website, UNESCO or UNESCO Bangkok. You'll find it available either now or very soon. And we'll also be reaching out to all of our partners and collaborators and member states following the event with more information on the country initiatives that Nini was talking about for this ESD for 2030 roadmap. Now, if I could just take a second here to list off, we're pleased to be joined by 6 panelists today. First on the list, we have Ethel Agnes Pascua Valenzuela, who's the Director of the Southeast Asian Ministers of Education Organization. Ethel, if you could turn your camera on to start, and then I'll list the rest of the people as well. Next, we have Nandini Chatterjee, who's head of Rethinking Learning at the UNESCO Mahatma Gandhi Institute of Education for Peace and Sustainable Development. Nandini, could you turn your camera on as well, please? Next, we have Linley Tulloch, a lecturer from the School of Education at the University of South Pacific. Linley, can you please turn your camera on? And some country member states, we have Yoshiaki Ishida, who's the Director for International Strategic Planning at the Ministry of Education, Culture, Sports, Science, and Technology in Japan. Yoshiaki Ishida, if you could turn on your camera, please. Almagul Muhamedkanova, I apologize if I mispronounced your name, who is the Vice President of National Academy of Education, the Ministry of Education and Science, Kazakhstan. And lastly, Bida Wangchuk, the Chief Program Officer of the Bhutan National Commission for UNESCO at the Ministry of Education in Bhutan. We're very pleased to welcome these speakers with us today. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time, so I've kindly asked each speaker to reflect on a few key questions regarding how their organization or their country is reflecting these achievements and challenges and initiatives in ESD for 2030. Primarily looking at those 5 key priority areas that Nini mentioned just a moment ago. First, we'd like to give the floor to Dr. Ethel Pascua Valenzuela from SEAMEO. Ethel, if you're there, the floor is yours and we'd like to hear from you.
Education for Sustainable Development empowers people to change the way of life, how they think, how they work towards a sustainable future. And this can be achieved by equipping people, especially the youth, with the right skills and knowledge that help them develop a sustainable lifestyle, initiatives, and mindset, and even to become role models for sustainable future. And the effective way to teach ESD, according to UNESCO, is by having them involved actively in the process. SEAMEO and UNESCO work on ESD initiatives such as sustainability begins with the teachers. In collaboration with UNESCO Global Action Program or GAP and the government of Japan, we have conducted a program on sustainability begins with teacher in order to support teacher educators in mainstreaming ESD into existing programs and institutional policies, to build capacity of deans and teacher educators of selected teacher educator institutions in Southeast Asia to be able to integrate ESD concepts and principles into the curricula, develop and utilize the existing ESD guidebook or toolkit, and review and analyze the results of the implementation on regional situation analysis. The Education for Sustainable Development concept has to be integrated in teacher education curriculum, as well as relevant teacher training institutions in the region. So SEAMEO Secretariat has identified key countries and lead teacher education institutions in Southeast Asia to organize in-country workshops with 5 or more teacher education institutions. That way, we can reach as many multiplier institutions as possible in developing ESD implementation, plans, policies, and activities. The countries who joined the SEAMEO Secretariat were Cambodia, Laos PDR, Indonesia, the Philippines, and Thailand. The workshops have planted seeds of hope to educators and teacher trainers that provided integration of ESD in their curricula from K-12 up to higher education, and including the development of learning environment. The sub-regional workshop on global citizenship education is also one of the activities that we have been doing with Ministry of Education of Japan and Ministries of Education in Southeast Asia. We have conducted sub-regional workshop on global citizenship education with funding from UNESCO APCU in order to analyze current policies and practices on GCED in Southeast Asia, enhance the capacities of educators in Southeast Asia, particularly teacher educators, to integrate global citizenship education in teacher training and facilitate the intra-sub-regional collaboration among teacher educators in the region. This hopefully will better prepare teachers and their capacity to promote global citizenship education, expand and enhance the global citizenship education network in Southeast Asia. One of our favorite awards is SEAMEO Japan ESD Award, which has been convened for many years by SEAMEO and the Ministry of Education, Culture, Sports, Science and Technology, or MEX, of Japan. The SEAMEO Japan ESD Awards has been running since 2012, and it is one of our flagship programs, and we do it annually. For SEAMEO ESD Awards, we have selected key concepts, key themes, and many educational institutions join the implementation of ESD in different forms. ESD network should be nurtured. We have it already, but we can have recommendations as continuing to collaborate with teacher education institutions, expanding the base and network of ESD teacher trainees to upscale ESD programs in different districts, provinces, and even villages from country to regional levels. We should continue to integrate education for sustainable development into policy making and even in teacher training. Developing the right tools to assess and monitor ESD implementation on the national and regional level are really important. I thank you all for listening, and may you have a good day.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ethel. An excellent contribution, and very pleased to see the efforts of SEAMEO colleagues working in ESD. Next, I'd like to turn the floor over to Nandini Chatterjee from MGIEP. Nandini, pleased to meet you, pleased to welcome you to the event, and look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you so much, Mark, and hello, everybody. When MGIEP decided to take an active role in meeting the goals of ESD, they decided to take a data-based approach. And I want to take you back to 2015-16 across 126 countries to try and understand what had been the impact of a number of peace education programs that were already in place. Okay? The idea was to try and understand if just being exposed to these peace education programs had made a change in the attitudes of youth. So about 1,500 youth between the ages of 15 to 34 participated in this survey, which included progressive and non-progressive attitude questions, some of which were, some people in this world should have more opportunities than others, and questions like, no one country should dominate the world, which was treated as a progressive question. The results of that survey revealed that whilst about 65 to 68% of attitudes had changed and become progressive, there were a good 35% of attitudes that had not changed, which clearly indicated that just a knowledge-based exposure to peace education was not enough to drive change. In the meanwhile, over the last 20 years, our understanding of how to bring about change in attitudes and mindsets has undergone a sea change because of the advances in cognitive science and the neurosciences of learning. We now know that because the decision-making brain, the intellectual brain, the executive function brain is anatomically connected to the emotional brain, unless we are able to design pedagogies which are able to build both emotional intelligence and intellectual evidence, we will not be able to change mindsets and behavior. And action is key to be able to achieve ESD. So therefore, MGIEP has now undertaken a very strong approach into trying to mainstream social and emotional learning into education systems. It is important that we embed social and emotional learning in our education systems. And so for that purpose, we designed a new framework, which we called EMC Square. It stands for building the skills of empathy, mindfulness, compassion, and critical inquiry. And recognizing that we need to reach out to children across the world, to educators across the world, we decided to put all of this and address it using technology. And so we developed a learning platform called Framerspace. So putting all this together, we designed new digital pedagogies which could be used by students and teachers in different parts of the world in their school curricula. And in order to test whether these programs were really making an impact, we actually conducted a large research study where we had 8 countries participate. 5 schools from each country participated in our programs, whereby they took these courses developed online, which included themes of migration, violence, identity, governance. And the idea was, by using pre and post assessments, but having children participate in a learning experience which was available digitally, by listening to stories of people, by participating in dialogue, by reflecting upon the actions of others, by trying to take perspectives of others, could we actually build both learning and knowledge as well as drive emotional competencies. And here I'm very excited to share with you that the results have been very encouraging. We've implemented this across the last year, and we found that by collecting data with pre and post assessments, we were actually able to impact not only changes and improvements and understanding of global issues, but show increases in perspective taking, respect and curiosity for other cultures, and even changes in compassion and empathy among students. So this program has now been implemented across 8 countries, and looking at how much of an impact even a 3-month intervention, which includes emotional learning, pro-social behavior, along with knowledge, can impact our understanding and learning of the child. We are now proposing to scale this across countries. At the youth level, again, realizing the importance of building social and emotional learning skills, a program on compassionate integrity training has been developed. So this is a course which is actually being created by Life University, and MGIEP, along with Life University, has made this program now available on a digital learning platform where youth can take a self-directed course to build qualities of, again, empathy, mindfulness, compassion. And we are hoping over the next 2 years to be able to scale this to about 10,000 learners and make this open to as many youth as possible across the world. This will have a certificate-based course, so once there are youth trainers available, they can actually also take this to many more areas in different parts of the world. Finally, in order to consolidate all this and to make sure this makes an impact into policy, MGIEP has recently set up a global collective for social and emotional learning, where we are inviting governments, stakeholders, NGOs, organizations engaged in social emotional learning to partner with us to find the best ways on how we might be able to mainstream social and emotional learning. So we've laid out a roadmap, which we hope will allow us to mainstream social and emotional learning in many education systems to be able to make an impact to ESD up to 2030. Thank you so much, Mark, for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Nandini. It's a pleasure to hear about the strong work that MGIEP is doing. And I appreciate the efforts that are being made in terms of changing mindsets, attitudes, behaviors, behaviors and your efforts in implementing and integrating social and emotional learning. So thank you very much, Nandini, for sharing the information there. And next, I'd like to welcome Linley Tulloch from the University of South Pacific, who's going to give us a regional or a sub-regional view from various efforts in the Pacific Islands. Linley, it's a pleasure to welcome you. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for having me here to speak today. And I was really interested listening to Nandini talk about some of the developments in her area, because some of them mirror our own, especially the development of emotional competencies and empathy. So thank you for that presentation. The main achievement in our area has been the development of a set of resources designed to be used in ECCE centres, primary and secondary schools, and at a tertiary level, specifically teacher training. The resources are for use in 7 Pacific countries: Tuvalu, Niue, Tonga, Nauru, which are the ECCE and primary levels, and the Solomon Islands, Fiji and Vanuatu for the secondary and tertiary levels. So there's a wide range of levels and both terms of people and also levels in terms of education. These resources all address the priority action areas, and I will discuss this soon, but first I want to give you an overview of the resources. These resources have been developed in line with feedback we received from extensive stakeholder consultation in the various countries. Common themes that were teased out and emerged and informed the development of the resources were taken on board and included into the subsequent development. Consequently, the resources are based on a focus on Pacific value systems and Indigenous ecological knowledge. They are designed to be relevant and meaningful within the context of the communities where they are used. At the ECCE level, we've designed 2 big wordless big books for shared reading experiences and teacher guides that support teachers and young children in connecting with the natural world. The big books facilitate open-ended storytelling by young children to be inclusive of their voices and also their languages. We want to focus on developing the wonder, awe, love and respect for the environment that we know young children naturally experience. They also provide opportunities for teachers to introduce key sustainability concepts at this young level. They are the springboard for further learning and action. There are also bilingual teacher guides to support teachers in understanding the nature of ESD and its significance. The teacher guides also help teachers to use the big books in line with developing ecological understanding and connection with nature in young children. At the primary level, we've developed 4 reading books that link to the science and social science curriculum. There are 2 books for years 5 to 6 and 2 books for years 7 to 8. They have been organised according to 2 broad themes, which are terrestrial and ocean sustainability. At this level, there is also a teacher guide to support teachers in understanding SD and ESD, as well as linking to the local curriculum and using the books. At the secondary level, there's 4 resources, these are a student workbook and a teacher guide for years 9 and 10, and the same for years 11 and 12. These resources link to the themes at the primary level on terrestrial and ocean sustainability and have been developed with a focus on biodiversity and the place of humanity in maintaining the ecological balance. So as I'm talking, you can see there is a link between the various levels. We've specifically designed the resources to develop knowledge of sustainability concepts in depth over time. At the tertiary level, there are resources, 2 resources, 1 module for teacher trainees and 1 module and 1 teacher's guide for the facilitator of the module. These focus on developing future teachers' understanding of sustainability and ESD, as well as the guided process of designing, implementing and reflecting on a cycle of inquiry learning and solution-focused action in their local communities. All these books build on each other for consistency to ensure students develop good content knowledge, skills and dispositions for taking action over time. Key sustainability concepts throughout the resources include, but are not limited to, in the ecological sustainability sphere, we've got biodiversity, interdependence, ecosystem, habitat, living and non-living beings, and many others. In the social dimension, we've got community, values, Indigenous knowledge and spirituality. And in the economic one, we discuss trade and natural resources, so working with the environment. So there's a focus on building competencies in critical thinking, values exploration, social decision making, and grounding and nurturing all discussions in Indigenous ecological knowledge. These competencies that I've just discussed are identified as of high significance in the development of meaningful ESD, which is why we've included them in the resources. So in touching on the 5 action areas, I just want to discuss briefly how our resources do that. In terms of advancing policy, the development of these ESD resources has occurred alongside thoughtful reflection on curriculum policy and links across the Pacific in the countries we're working with. We've aimed to ensure teachers are able to see the usefulness of the resources as they link to key curriculum areas, especially science and social studies. The initial upfront context scan included a comprehensive scan of local context and initiatives and resources that were already in place. We didn't want to reinvent the wheel. We wanted to develop something very unique that was embedded in the local communities within which the resources have been developed for, and also linked to policies in those particular contexts. Transforming learning environments. Our resources are designed to encourage holistic learning that engages students as members of school communities and communities more broadly speaking. We are designing learning experiences involving formal and non-formal learning contexts. The learning is linked to specific localities and the daily lives of the people who live there. They're based in the Pacific, and we've linked the learning to Pacific value systems, specifically values of humility, respect for land and people, and care for the land and guardianship, those ones that link in particular to sustainability. As these resources are based in the Pacific, we have, oh sorry, I've already said that, our resources support holistic values-based and transformative learning experiences. They link to knowledge held by elders and aim to support and develop Indigenous ecological knowledge. This is combined with Western scientific knowledge of the environment and the human impact on it. We support learners in thinking critically and making decisions and taking action on relevant and local issues. Students are supported in learning through the head, heart and hands, and learning to live what they learn. Building the capacities of educators, this is very high on the list of priorities in designing these resources. That's why we've got teacher support modules with each of the set of resources developed. And we've developed teacher guides, as I've said, and they provide curriculum links and ideas for learning activities. They also cover knowledge, skills, values, and attitudes needed for the transition to sustainability. Content covered includes discussion of key environmental sustainability concepts such as the natural environment, living organisms and their characteristics and needs, non-living things, habitat, ecosystem, interdependence, and so forth. These are illustrated with examples from the Pacific countries for whom the resources are designed, such as the coral reef and its role in providing habitat and shelter for a range of diverse sea life. We also discuss land animals such as peka, which is the bat, and the interdependence between this bat and the mango tree and seed dispersal. These are illustrated with appropriate photos and supported by sound research. We also cover content linked to the social and economic sustainability pillars, such as the importance of natural resources, renewable and non-renewable resources, the relationship between people and the environment, traditional customary knowledge, values and practice. Spirituality is also covered, as we consider this as integral to EFS, and it was a feedback we got from stakeholder consultation as well. Values we cover are community-based, and I've already discussed some of those. We've included case studies from each of the country on traditional agriculture and fishing practices, and this knowledge goes along, and the knowledge that goes alongside this. For example, in Tuvalu, the pulaka plant can only be grown through special farming methods involving large pits of composted soil. Below the water, the knowledge of how to do this and prepare these pits is passed down through generations, but it's been lost. So we're deliberately scaffolding and promoting intergenerational IEK transfer. Many of these practices are known only to a few of the older generations, but they're really important for place-based knowledge for food security, especially, which is an issue, a sustainability issue in the Pacific. The case studies enable the students to compare and develop rich knowledge of not only their own place, but also other places. And there's also skills that are developed, such as community connections, connecting with villages and learning about traditional sustainable ways of living. All books and modules are based on the philosophy of active inquiry-based learning and taking action to resolve environmental issues. They foster an attitude of care for the environment and a willingness to take action to resolve issues. Okay, so we've also one of the challenges has been making the connections between Western scientific knowledge and Pacific worldviews. Have I used up my time?
Yeah, Lindley, yes. Could I kindly ask you to sort of summarize in 1 minute or so, and we'll move on. Sure. Thank you so much for the information, but yeah.
Absolutely. So, so we see these resources as supporting ESD and consider ESD of central importance in the efforts made to SDG 4 and other SDGs, and it supports people in developing the relevant knowledge, skills, attitudes and values in addressing sustainability issues in their own locality. So I will leave it there, and thank you all for having me to speak. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Lindley. Much appreciated. No, an excellent overview of the various initiatives. Of course, you're covering quite a considerable large area with many, many countries in the Pacific. So thank you for that overview. Just pulling out, the key concepts of capacity building that you're focusing on with the resources and working with teachers, as well as bringing in the community level engagement. It's very good to hear how well you're working with the community actors in that. So thank you very much, Lindley. Next, now we'd like to look more specifically at some country level initiatives. And first, I'm pleased to welcome Yoshiaki Ishida from the Ministry of Education in Japan. Mr. Ishida, the floor is yours. We look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you very much. Could you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone, and здравствуйте, дорогие друзья, in Russian. First of all, I would like to extend my heartfelt congratulations to launch of the ESD for 2030 roadmap, which would serve as a clear guide for everyone to implement, expand, and deepen ESD activities aligning with the ESD for 2030 framework. As a leading advocate of ESD, Japan has been implementing ESD nationally and supporting promotion of ESD globally through voluntary contribution to UNESCO by the Japan Funding Trust. Today, I would like to share our experiences on ESD and also introduce our ongoing efforts toward achieving SDGs and the framework of the ESD for 2030. As for the achievement and the future plan, as the Ministry of Education, we have continued effort to mainstream ESD in school education system as a top priority since the era of UN Decade of ESD. Upon the persistent internal discussion within the ministry, the core idea of ESD, which is expressed as a fostering builders of a sustainable society, was incorporated into the new national curriculum standards for pre-primary, primary, lower secondary, and upper secondary. Builders of a sustainable society are the person who could take various global common issues personally, consider the way of solving by themselves, and act toward it. And this transition of people's sense of values and behavior would be a key to achieve the sustainable society. According to the incorporation to the new national curriculum standards, every school education at all levels has been conducted based on the philosophy of ESD nationwide. We believe the reform of education system is the most efficient way to change people, society, and eventually change the world. Our ministry, together with the Japanese National Commission for UNESCO, has developed a guide to promoting ESD, aiming at providing practical guidance to school teachers as a supporting document for school teachers who implement ESD in classrooms. a guide to promoting ESD. First edition of the guide was issued in 2016, and now we have just started to revise the guide in line with the new framework of the ESD for 2030. Another ongoing activities following the launch of ESD for 2030 is revision of National ESD Implementation Plan. Since ESD has been one of the top priority of our government, the first ESD Implementation Plan has been issued in 2006 by the decision made by the Interministerial Liaison Committee on ESD, which consists of the more than 10 ministries, including the Cabinet Office, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Environment, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and so on. The National ESD Implementation Plan has been revised based on each international framework on ESD, and we have just started the next revision in accordance with the launch of the roadmap. We are also planning to showcase the revised guide as well as the National ESD Implementation Plan on the occasion of the upcoming World Conference on ESD to be held in Berlin, May 2021. And as for the our role of ESD to the SDG 4 and SDGs. As affirmed by the UN General Assembly resolutions, through fostering builders of a sustainable society who could act for solution of global common issues, ESD definitely contributes to all the SDG goals beyond Goal 4. We believe that education is a key enabler to change people, change society, and change the world. We hereby commit to continue promoting ESD, including providing support member states to prepare country initiative through Japan Founding Trust as one of the leading country on ESD. Thank you very much.
Mr. Ishida, thank you very much for your kind words and all your achievements in Japan. It's good to see the strong support at the national level in Japan, and I think Japan can show as a role model for other countries looking forward to take on the ESD initiatives, especially as we move to this new decade of ESD for 2030. Your examples of implementing new curriculum, guiding frameworks at the national level is a good story that can be shared, and we'd be happy to share that information through you to other member states. So thank you very much for that information. Moving along, we're slightly behind schedule, but we will keep to our panelists, so don't worry, I won't cut the panelists unless you go too long. We're slightly behind, but next I would like to welcome from Kazakhstan, Almagul Mukhamedkanova. Almagul, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, colleagues. I'm very grateful to the organizers for this wonderful opportunity to have a platform to discuss the topical issues for education for sustainable development. I believe that in our work, and I would like to thank all the speakers for sharing their experience, the experience of their countries. The experience is unique and highly useful, and we will take into account the initiatives and the new approaches. As the moderator told us, Kazakhstan does believe that this is a wonderful platform for further work. And in Kazakhstan, we do support the 5 main domains, the 5 main directions we mentioned today. I do represent a structure depending on Ministry of Education in Kazakhstan, and we listened very carefully to the explanation and presentation by Japan. In Kazakhstan, we do our best to integrate all these important topics in our curriculum and in our work. As I represent the Ministry of Science and Education of Kazakhstan, I would like to underline the main three directions that we are implementing in our country today. Obviously, we don't ignore others, but we are improving and updating the conditions and environment for better learning. We have been modernizing our learning conditions because we do understand how important it is to succeed in education. And our standards, our education standards and our curricula go through consultations and take into account the requirements and aims that were mentioned today for ESD. Education system is a unique platform for implementation of all these best endeavors. We have 1 million school children and plus 2 parents for every child. So it makes a real large scale of endeavors and awareness raising. So Ministry of Education is doing its best to integrate all these wonderful principles. Starting from 2016, Kazakhstan has introduced a wide range of new skills to be learned. 16 main skills were mentioned. New educated professional can't lack these skills if he or she wants to be integrated in the new world. So we have been working on a wide range of these skills, such as critical thinking, functional and creative collective work, and the skill to apply an out-of-the-box thinking and new knowledge to sort out difficulties. So I do believe that Kazakhstan has improved its efforts, but we can't stop here. Obviously, we have to go on and to improve our capacity and to support our teachers, to train our teachers, because teachers are really a key stakeholder in this work. And thanks to UNESCO's support, Kazakhstan is been working on integrating the 3 main components, but all the 17 SDGs in its education and training. We do have a plan to have a transition to a 12-year education. To do it, at best, we have to integrate new standards and to prepare new methodology, new guidebooks for teachers. So we are updating all our components for taking into account all the sustainability aspects for education and school education. We have developed a new program for early childhood education as well. And a continuous education is a strategic goal for us. We do believe that the path of continuous education will enable us to implement all our programs and aims. So we are very, very grateful to the UNESCO and Almaty program and team for its excellent support for integration of the best practices. And we do underline that the Ministry of Education approved this plan and supports our work. We benefit of the support of the ministry and of an active participation of all the stakeholders, parents, associations, teachers. It's very important for common success. Speaking about our curricula, I think that we have improved it starting from 2016. We have been working on child-oriented curricula. So a child is in the center of the learning process, and all the environment, all the natural conditions, nature, all that surrounds the child is taken into account and helps the child to evolve, to develop, and to become a new citizen of a new world. And I underline that this is very important work in the framework of our transition efforts to the 12-year education. So we have started and we will keep going in this work. We are developing a roadmap to integrate the ESD component in our education system, taking into account all the ESD aspects. I do believe that we need a system-wide approach. We can't have one little program separated from other aspects. I mentioned and I took good note of the experience of other countries. They do follow a wide range approach, multi-stakeholders approach, and Kazakhstan will follow such compulsory and complex and wide range approach as well. Obviously, we can always learn new skills. It's part of continuous learning, right? So we will learn, we will upgrade our own knowledge, and we will follow all the 17 SDGs to updating and improving training skills for all our teachers. And we will be doing it with Almaty's center, UNESCO center support. So we have already good experience, and we have many events planned to succeed within 1 year time frame. We would like to thank one more time the representative of Japan. We feel that this approach is a very skillful and can be really applied on the country level. We receive national guidance, and we always think how to improve it for better education results. So all these analysis and studies help to improve our work, especially the study we have started to analyze our new integrated and fully fledged approach. So let me underline that education for sustainable development is a really important and a topical issue, and we do join our efforts to succeed in this endeavor. We have a long-term goals, yes, but we will do our best to give to our students, to our children, all the necessary skills for a new world. And there is no parent, no child denying the importance of this approach, of this work, because all of us, we do love our country, we do love this humanity approach to improve the life for all humankind, thanks to this new approach and new skills. So we wish all the best to all the participants, and we do know that sharing experience is wonderful, and we call upon all the participants to continue and to share their precious knowledge, their precious achievements and best practices, because it helps everyone and it helps us very much. So thank you one more time to all the participants, to our moderator, and our country, Kazakhstan, is ready to support these wonderful initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Almagul. Much appreciated for your contributions today. I appreciate the comments that you make about strengthening the skills and competencies of your learners. I think this is a common theme that we've seen from a lot of our speakers today is how do we really strengthen the competencies, skills, changing mindsets, behaviors and attitudes of our young learners so that we can achieve ESD and the SDGs. So thank you once again. I just want to point out, since we're running a bit behind, and there's a few questions that have come up in the Q&A section, to any of our panelists, if you could take a look at some of those questions and type in some answers. Unfortunately, we may not have a chance to come back to everybody for a verbal response. So if there's any way some of our panelists could type in some answers to those Q&A over the next 10 minutes or so while we have Bida from Bhutan speaking, that would be much appreciated. With that, lastly, Bida Wangchuk from Bhutan, thank you so much for waiting. We're very much looking forward to our friends, what our friends in Bhutan have to say about ESD. So Bida, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to speak about ESD in Bhutan. With regard to the policies, it's well embedded, I must say, because the country's development philosophy is cross-national happiness, which is development with values, and it encompasses environmental protection, sustainable social development. So that it trickles down to all policies. So with regard to the ESD example, especially in the schools, especially in the schools, I will share more on the schools. We have this program for educating for GNH, which is to summarize, it's 3H. 3H is head, heart, and hand, and it's for the holistic development of the child. And the ESD components are also integrated in our curriculum. And for the teachers, since it's integrated in the curriculum, the teachers are also involved in the curriculum design and development, so they know how to go about once they are in the field to teach the children. Then we also have the network, the SPNet network, which I'm sure many of the panelists and the participants are familiar with. We do a lot of programs through this network. We have what we call as district-wise, we have these themes being adopted by the focal points under the broad category of ESD and GSET. For instance, some districts, so basically the schools in those districts would take up the theme either on green energy or responsible citizenship or on sustainable lifestyles, and based on their sub-themes, the schools carry out programs and activities in the schools. For instance, they carry out trash to cash program, or they would have trash tag challenge, or they would have a hub where they talk about, where in the hub the children would come and sit and discuss about GSET and ESD. So these are some of the examples that it's happening in the school. Then we also have a community vitality program in the schools, initiated by the schools, where they involve it's a sort of a whole school approach where they involve the teachers, students, and the community on awareness programs on ESD. Then we also have this ESD components being touched in the non-formal education curriculum. Then we have a lot of, as a part of community vitality program, there's a lot of environmental advocacy programs in the schools. And then now the Ministry of Education is working on the national curriculum framework, where they want the curriculum to be more of an experiential and contextual learning for the children, basically moving towards learner centers, where our learners are empowered and then they become agent of change. However, we need to build the capacity of the teachers, the educators, so that they are able to build the competencies in children to enable for achievement or for the implementation of ESD in the schools and the institutes. We also have youth initiating programs in the schools or in their community. However, with regard to the community or at the local level, we need to build partnership with local level, so that there is more involvement of the local leaders and more involvement of the community. As of now, it's more initiated by the school, but we would like the community to initiate themselves. With regard to ESD as a whole, I believe it's all about empowering with the knowledge and skills for a peaceful and sustainable society. And for that, we will continue implementing programs to implement an ESD, and also we have our strong support for this ESD. And for that, we would like to congratulate UNESCO for being able to launch ESD for 2030. Thank you. That's all I have.
Bida, thank you so much. A pleasure to hear about the initiatives, how you're linking ESD to your national priority of gross national happiness, fulfilling the holistic development of the child. Great to hear those stories that you're sharing. Now, since we're slightly over time, and we don't really have much time to go back to each one individually, I just wanted to highlight some of the questions that are coming through, particularly asking for support from UNESCO. Yes, of course, UNESCO is always willing to support our member states and initiatives that are undertaking. But please be reminded that this ESD for 2030 roadmap is really a roadmap for countries to take an initiative themselves, to lead the way and UNESCO can jump in and support as necessary. But as I said, UNESCO is willing to develop these strong partnerships with member states, with NGOs, CSOs, and so on. Lastly, about the teacher training development, I think there was a few questions, particularly on Lindley for the development of her resources and guides and capacity building in the Pacific, which I think she tried to answer and mentioned that it's in development and is ongoing or will be continuing in the future. And I think broad perspectives, a lot of the questions we cannot answer in detail today, but just a reminder that we will be following up with more information. We'll be sending the roadmap around to people who registered for this event, and with all our partners, we'll send the information that we've shared today. The country initiative that was described earlier in the presentation, we will have more information on exactly what this is, what we will be looking for, how you can join, how you can participate. We'll send that information to all our members, to our partners, and try to form country-level teams that can act for this ESD for 2030 roadmap. So with that, I want to thank everyone again for their participation. Dr. Ethel, thank you very much. Always a pleasure to hear your contributions from SEAMEO, and we look forward to working with you. Nandini from MGIEP, always a pleasure to hear about the initiatives of MGIEP. Lindley, pleasure to hear about the initiatives that are happening in the Pacific, and we look forward to working with you through our colleagues in the Pacific and at UNESCO office in Pacific. Mr. Ishida, thank you once again for representing the government of Japan, the Ministry of Education in Japan. A pleasure to hear about the strength and leadership that Japan has in the ESD initiatives. Almagul from Kazakhstan, a pleasure to hear about all the hard work that you are doing in developing new curriculum, bringing the holistic development of the learners. And Bida, once again, a pleasure to hear from you and your efforts in Bhutan. Now, to finish off the event, to close the event today, I welcome once again Nini Tong from the section of Inclusive Quality Education here at UNESCO Bangkok. Nini.
Thank you very much, Mark. Since there's no time left, I'm going to make a short concluding remark. So by echoing my colleague Mark, I would like to thank all of our speakers and panelists for their contribution. And it's great to see you. Many promising initiatives across the regions, I would say. Moving forward, UNESCO invite all the member states to launch your country initiative on ESD for 2030, building on existing work on ESD and creating new momentums. Country initiatives should build on ongoing effort, as we discussed, on ESD, as well as possible new efforts also. Ministry of Education should take a responsibility to mainstream ESD across all aspects of education and institution, including curriculum, teaching and learning, community partnerships, governance, policy, and to facilitate operations to equip educator and student with the key competency on sustainability awareness and the capability to respond to challenge. To move forward toward target 4.7, we need to foster partnership at different levels of governments and with other concerned parties that continue a chain of perspectives and knowledge where promote mutual accountability of ESD advancement and then maximize our potential contribution. Having said that, once again, I thank you all for joining us at the launch of the ESD for 2030 roadmap and look forward to working with all our member states and partners to realize the potential of ESD for their sustainable development goals. So once again, thank you very much. And also thank you. I would like to thank my colleague Mark, Lee, and also our ID colleagues. And also, thank you very much.
Thank you, Nini. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Be in touch. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you very much.